till the tears run down from my eyes. Lord, somebody, ooh, somebody, can anybody find me somebody to love?
Alexa, play hits from Queen.
Okay.
Somebody to love.
With Amazon Music, a voice is all you need. Get tens of millions of songs. Download the Amazon Music app today.
TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand. Minnesota Vikings, the NFL. Football, yeah, football. Welcome to Purple Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Purple Podcast. Matthew Coller here, along with Joe Caporoso. I will call him my favorite Jets follow by far on the interwebs, and he runs turnonthejets.com. All sorts of good stuff from Joe. A great follow on Twitter at @JCaporoso. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Sure thing. Now, let me start before we get to Sam Darnold and what the Vikings are up against with Sheldon Richardson. He is returning to the Meadowlands here, and is it still the Meadowlands? People call it that?
MetLife Stadium now.
No. No, Joe, sorry. I'm going to stick with Meadowlands.
As long as you don't call it Giant Stadium, I'm happy.
Okay, yeah, all right, that'll work. MetLife Stadium. I think I even wrote the Meadowlands in an article. So growing up, it was, they go out there and it's, Marv Albert or something. Welcome to the Meadowlands. Well, anyway, okay. So MetLife Stadium, fine. We'll go with that. Sheldon Richardson, Mike Zimmer today was applauding his professionalism as a member of the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm curious, Joe, from your experience, having Sheldon Richardson there, make a name for himself, but then also have some issues with the New York Jets and ultimately get moved by the Jets, what your thought is on whether this is sustainable for Sheldon or whether it's him on a one-year deal trying to watch his P's and Q's?
I would probably skew a little more towards the latter. I think Richardson had a really good start to his career with the Jets. Obviously, he was the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Was a real pleasant surprise that year with how explosive he was and being a disruptive playmaker. Continued to build on that in year two, had a nice year on a really bad Jets team. And then some more of the, trouble started. And yes, he had a couple incidents off the field with driving. He dealt with a suspension in back-to-back seasons. But I think what was most concerning, beyond that, was the consistency of his play at that point. And some periods of a lack of effort and just a lack of production. There were flashes of greatness at times. He would have, one or two games here and there where he'd be completely dominant, but the consistency wasn't there. And it folded in well with Mo Wilkerson in a period where the Jets had all this talent in the defensive line, but they weren't actually producing. And I don't think there's a Jets fan out there who regrets the trade that they pulled off for him, where they got a second-round pick and Jermaine Kearse back. And Kearse has been a really productive player for them, probably more productive than anybody thought. And that second-round pick was part of the package that was used to go up and get Sam Darnold.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I expected exactly what we've seen from Sheldon Richardson, which is a guy who's been engaged. He has been media friendly. If you want a Sheldon Richardson interview, you can definitely get it this year. But as far as signing him to a long-term contract, Joe, I think there's a reason why the Vikings were able to get him at such a reasonable price on a one-year deal.
Yeah, absolutely. This is his third team in 3 years, right? He's bounced around between the Jets, the Seahawks, and now the Vikings. It's going to be very interesting to see what the market looks like for him, depending on how the rest of the season goes. There's no doubt that he has the physical ability to be one of the better, if not best, interior defensive linemen in the NFL. But it's a matter of consistency, and it's a matter of can he stay clean off the field and not get hit with any type of suspension. He's already been suspended, I think, 5 games by the league and once or twice by the Jets coaches throughout his career.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern if they do decide to go forward with him. Let me switch to the rookie roller coaster at quarterback. You start out, I'm sure Jets fans were booking their Super Bowl tickets to Atlanta after week 1. It was a pretty darn incredible game by Sam Darnold. And then, the next couple of weeks, there are some rocky times. And then he's come out of that on the other side with great performances against Denver and Indianapolis. How do you assess the rookie performance so far from Sam Darnold?
I think it's been positive. I think, for a 21-year-old rookie, the youngest starting week one quarterback in the NFL since 1970, I think through 6 games, it's been generally encouraging. Like you said, there's been some ups and downs. He struggled on a short week against a very good Cleveland defense on the road. He struggled in Jacksonville against a very good defense on the road. But he's evened out his play the past couple of weeks, and he's aggressive, and he attacks down the field and makes big plays in the passing game. He's got 7 touchdowns on plays of 20 yards or longer. And, the 7 interceptions is concerning, but I think one thing that's a positive is 0 fumbles, and that was a big knock on him coming out of USC. And he hasn't had a single fumble yet this year. He's got the 9 touchdowns to go with 7 interceptions, and he's averaging 225 yards passing per game with sort of a rotating crew and cast at running back and receiver. The Jets, I think, have 6 different players who have over 100 yards receiving this year, 3 different guys with over 200 yards, and have had 6 different guys each have separate 50-yard games. So it's names like Chris Herndon, Robbie Anderson, and Terrell Pryor, and Quincy Enunwa, who unfortunately is now hurt, turning out production. Some of these guys are a little underrated league-wide, but it's still not generally considered, your top 10 household names of skill position talent. And Darnold's still getting it done and still producing, I would argue, at a rate equal to, if not better than every other rookie quarterback.
So when I watched Darnold at USC, I was very interested in him just because of the hype coming into his final year in college. And the one thing I took away after seeing 5-6 games of his was this man can make big-time throws with the best in the NFL. But, of course, there are still some of those throws that you would put under the ill-advised category. Is that what you've seen a lot of from him, is making those special throws and like you said, being aggressive?
I think that's fair. That's a fair way to categorize that. I mean, he is not someone who is going to check the football down to pad his completion percentage. He's not someone who's going to throw a 3-yard swing pass on 3rd and 9 and take the punt or take the field goal. He waits and looks to throw further down the field and attack past the markers, and that has led to some big plays, but it's also led to some turnovers. He had an ugly interception last week against the Colts, where he kind of predetermined before the snap he was going to go to Robbie Anderson down the sideline. Ball got intercepted by Malik Hooker. The week before against Denver, he had a tip pass interception. Had a couple interceptions against Miami in week 2, one of which probably wasn't his fault. But I think that's part of it. And if, he throws 13, 14 interceptions this year, I don't think that's a disaster as long as he's still throwing, over 20 touchdowns as a rookie, which I think is an impressive threshold to clear considering, the Jets roster and coaching staff around him, which I would say is generally considered middle of the road by most for league standard.
So how do you think that he has adapted to just the confusion that NFL defenses can cause? Because I watched last week Mike Zimmer just toy with Josh Rosen, and Rosen has no weapons, and his offensive line is abysmal. It couldn't possibly be worse. So that was part of it, but also, especially on 3rd downs, Arizona went 0 for 10. And when I went through the tape, it was a different look every single time, pressure coming from different areas. How has he handled that?
Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience this football season. Tons of TVs, legendary appetizers, amazing fresh half-pound burgers, handcrafted sandwiches, and a wide variety of other pub favorites. The drink menu is awesome, too. Huge selection of tap beer, handcrafted cocktails, and the best Bloody Marys in town. Seriously, these Bloodies are awesome. Try the Bacon Bloody, the Jalapeno Bloody, the Mother Mary, or just get a flight and try them all. Plus, Lucky's 13 celebrates Sunday Fun Day. Happy hour all day long on Sunday, every Sunday. Events and prize giveaways during games, too. Lucky's 13 has locations in Bloomington, Burnsville, Mendota, Plymouth, and Roseville. Having people over for the game? Call ahead to Lucky's and order some of those legendary apps, and they'll be ready to bring home when you get there. It's football time at Lucky's 13 Pubs. Find them online at luckys13pub.com. luckys13pub.com. It's the most wonderful time of the year, football time. And Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience. luckys13pub.com.
I think he's handled it pretty well. There were definitely some times against Cleveland and Jacksonville where he looked a little rattled and, seemed to be second guessing himself a little bit. But as someone who watched Geno Smith and Mark Sanchez start their entire rookie years, and again, this is a low bar to clear with those two, but there's just such a big difference in how much more composed he is and how even if he does make mistakes, he has a short memory and is willing to still play his game after that. There's no moment where he really looks completely overwhelmed out there. And you see that so frequently with rookie quarterbacks. You look at Josh Allen, putting up games where he goes 10 for 18, 50 yards, and he's taking, sacks for 16-yard losses. We haven't seen that with Darnold. Even when there are negative plays, he seems to find a way to mitigate the damage and not look like a chicken with his head cut off when he's running around out there. So Minnesota is going to be a much harder challenge than the Broncos or Colts were. Those are two teams who have struggling defenses. It is good that the Jets get them at home, but Darnold's going to have to play without a Nua, who has been his top receiver overall this year. It's going to be a good challenge for him, and hopefully he learned a lot from going against those Cleveland and Jacksonville defenses.
So I remember back in whenever it was, March, whenever the Kirk Cousins signing came down, that one of the New York papers came out with a column that was just demolishing Kirk Cousins and saying that the Jets got off good by not bringing him in. And I think we've seen that Kirk Cousins is a very, very good quarterback, but maybe not one of the elite quarterbacks. I look to you, Joe, for more reasoned Jets takes as opposed to let's see how hot we can turn it up. Tell me how Jets fans feel now with just a little bit of time to reflect on Kirk Cousins not signing in New York and instead drafting Sam Darnold.
Look, I think most Jet fans understood and were interested in going after Kirk Cousins, considering how rare it was that a quality starting quarterback hits the free agent market like that. It became pretty clear early in the process that the Vikings were going to be the favorite. Jet fans didn't want to hear it when people like myself and other people were saying they're probably not going to get him. Cousins didn't even humor them with a visit. I don't think it's that insulting. I mean, the Vikings were in the NFC Championship game last year. Mm-hmm. The Jets haven't made the playoffs since 2010. The Vikings have a much better built-in infrastructure to immediately compete for a Super Bowl over the course of a 3-year deal than the Jets do, who are really more framed up to hopefully start competing next year or the year after. So I think it worked out well for both sides. Personally, I've always been a little lukewarm on Cousins. I think he's a good to very good starting NFL quarterback. I was a little hesitant about investing that much in him because I just wondered if with that much money in him, invested in him, could you build a good enough roster around him to knock off New England and compete in the AFC, or would you be better served having a rookie on that rookie contract? And I was someone who was particularly high in the top 3 quarterbacks in this class, Mayfield, Darnold, and Rosen. I would have been okay with landing Cousins, but I just ultimately, again, I still wonder what his ceiling is and if he could clearly kind of break into being, a top 5 or 6 quarterback in the NFL, if he's really more of a guy who's in that, 9 to 11, 9 to 12 range. So at the end of the day, I think it worked out well for everybody. Jet fans will, definitely be, talking a little trash and booing Cousins at the game. But at the end of the day, I think everyone's happy they have a 21-year-old starter in Sam Darnold, and I think the Vikings are happy that they have a veteran quarterback in Cousins that they believe they can win a Super Bowl this year with.
I think it's just very hard if you're the Jets to take too much offense to that, right? I mean, the Vikings have not had the number 1 defense this year, but it's still talented and still could improve, and we've seen signs of that. But if you're Cousins and you're looking at the roster and you say Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, a proven tight end, number 1 defense, stable organization. I mean, it's very hard to say, and maybe different taxes, Joe, possibly different taxes. I'm not an expert in that area, but I mean, I think it's easy to understand if the guy's goal is to go a place where he can win. If anybody's going to pay him $30 million, that it would have been Minnesota instead of New York, because there's a lot more building to still do in New York as opposed to with the Vikings.
Yeah, I think it made sense for Cousins at the stage of his career that he was at to go to the Vikings. It was a very rare situation where you have a team who was on the cusp of going to a Super Bowl, who has receivers like Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs and Rudolph and all the other weapons that they have to have that option available. So I don't, hold it against them. The Jets would have, had more of a road to go to build to being into a contender. And the Jets, needed a long-term solution. Maybe not a guy who was only going to be here for 2 or 3 years with Cousins. So I think everything ended up breaking right. And credit to them that after Kirk Cousins said no, they immediately picked themselves up off the mat and pivoted to their plan B, which was bringing back Josh McCown, signing Teddy Bridgewater, and then aggressively moving up from 6 to 3 in the draft. So they had multiple different avenues to potentially address quarterback, and everything happened to break right for them, where they were able to get the guy they had as their number 1 quarterback overall at number 3, keep McCown as his backup, have Bridgewater look good enough in the preseason to merit getting a third-round pick back, which helps mitigate some of what you gave up for Darnold. And, again, you just look at how they handled quarterback, and, some of it's luck, but everything broke well, and it's really a credit to Mike McCagnon.
Do you feel like weird that they were that competent and they handled it almost exactly right? Everything went according to plan?
Look, it's been a rarity, definitely, for this team over the past few years, especially at the quarterback position. But good for them for having a plan B and having multiple options in place and being able to mobilize against them. The rest of the roster still has a couple issues. I think a lot of them have been swept under the rug because they've had two really nice wins the past 2 weeks. This is probably still a 6-10 or 7-9 team this year, and that's okay as long as they continue to build in the right direction for next year. But getting quarterback right is more important than anything else.
Okay, Joe, before I let you go, tell me about Jamal Adams, because when I look at him, and I haven't watched every Jets game back yet so far in preparation for this game, but he, to me, looks like your version of Harrison Smith.
It's a great compliment. I think Smith is, right up there with being the best safety in the NFL. Adams is an absolute monster in the box, and when he's coming downhill against the run, he's improved a lot in his ability to cover. I think that was a bit of a weak spot for him throughout his rookie year, and probably what held him back from being someone who was in Defensive Rookie of the Year discussions. He's definitely gotten better at that this year. Got his first interception, had his hands on some more footballs, and has just been a little more consistent overall in that area. And he's only 23 years old, and he's definitely the emotional leader of the team. He's a really fun guy to watch, plays with a lot of passion. Definitely talks a lot, and that's okay as long as you're going to back it up. And, this defense has been a little inconsistent, but they've been better the past 2 weeks. But he's definitely a fun player to watch. Caused, forced fumble last week when he came crashing down in the box. And has been involved in a couple other turnovers already this year.
Well, I'm interested to see how this matchup goes, Joe. I think that the Vikings look at it as a take care of business game, that if they're going to be a real Super Bowl contender, that they should beat a team like the Jets, but also after losing to Buffalo up here, there's no time where you can ever say that the Vikings will certainly just take care of business here. I think this could be actually a close game.
Yeah, I think it will be a close one. I think the Vikings are definitely catching the Jets at a good time. Starting safety Marcus May is not going to play. The Jets are likely to be without potentially Tremaine Johnson and or Buster Screen. That's their starting outside corner and their starting slot corner, although there's a chance that one or both of those guys could play. But if they do, they still may be a little banged up from the past 2 weeks. So the Jets, it's not a good week to be banged up in the secondary, considering Minnesota's passing attack. I think more than fair that the Vikings are 3 or 3.5 point favorites or whatever they are. I think the Jets, probably lose by, 6 to 8 points. This is a competitive game, but I just don't know that they have enough firepower to keep up with the points that Minnesota is likely to score in their defense.
All right, everyone, if you're interested in what's going on with the Jets, turnonthejets.com. Joe Caporoso does great work. Follow him at JCAPOROSO. Joe, great stuff. Great to talk to you again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And thank you all for listening to the Purple Podcast.
It's maybe the night that my dreams might let me know. All the stars are closer. All the stars are closer.
Tell me what you gonna do to me. Confrontation ain't nothing new to me. You could bring a bullet, bring a sword, bring a morgue, but you can't bring the truth to me.
Alexa, play Kendrick Lamar and SZA.
Okay. Maybe the night that my dreams might let me know. All the stars are closer.
With Amazon Music, a voice is all you need. Get tens of millions of songs. Download the Amazon Music app today.
President Trump and missing Saudi writer. I'm Tim McGuire with an AP News Minute. President Trump tells reporters at the White House he has asked Turkey to provide any audio and video it has related to missing Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
I'm not sure yet that it exists. Probably does, possibly does. I'll have a full report on that from Mike when he comes back.
Mr. President.
That's one of the things that's going to be the first question I ask.
Trump also says Saudi Arabia is an important ally in the Middle East. Turkish officials say Khashoggi was murdered in the Saudi's Istanbul consulate, which Saudi officials have denied. A group that encourages African Americans to vote says about 40 black residents of a senior living center operated by a Georgia county were told to get off a bus taking them to vote. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reports county officials considered Monday's bus trip a political activity, not allowed during county-sponsored events. Monday was the first day of early voting in Georgia. I'm Tim McGuire.